Hello. Um, I recently did an interview with my grandfather. Um, Out of respect for him, he asked me to not have him in the video. Um, as I said before, he's a little ill right now, and he just didn't want um, that to be recorded. But for my first question in my interview, I asked him, where did our family originate from? He told me that we originated from Hamburg, Germany. That's where his parents were from. They eventually moved to America, came over on a ship, um, settled in Brooklyn, New York, and that's where he lived for most of his life, through college, and then eventually moved to New Jersey. The next question I asked was, where did we first establish ourselves after moving to this country? And like I said, his answer was New York, settled in Brooklyn. He stayed there for quite some time. Um, my next question was, what was life like in our native country opposed to how life was actually in America? And he said that his parents had a pretty easy and simple life. They had a good job. They had a little bit of money. They weren't poor, but I mean they were rich by no means. Um, Life for them in America, though, tough. They struggled. There was a language barrier. There, he talked about how he ended up needing to be their interpreter later in his life when he learned the English language because at a young age he was able to pick it up quicker than his parents were because all they knew was German. Eventually they did pick it up, and they um, weren't fluent but knew enough to get by and to hold a job. Um, I then asked what struggles they faced when moving to America, and the struggles were obvious. There was a language barrier. They had to learn a new language. Because of that language barrier, that impeded them from getting a job right off the bat, keeping and holding a job. So that means no money. It was hard to buy food. It was hard to find shelter. Um, they were in and out of houses, well, apartments, and other families were living in them with them at the same time because I mean they couldn't afford to live, on their own. So there was multiple families living in a small space at a time. Often, they said they had one room to their whole family for quite some time until they eventually were able to get their own enough money to get their own place, well, their own apartment. Um, I then asked how life was being an immigrant, and he said that, well, my grandfather said that life for him, it was difficult at first, but um, it was just an adjustment. It was more difficult for his parents, he thought, because I mean, my grandfather, he learned the language because he grew up learning American, learning the English language and learning German, so he was around both. So he picked both of them up. His parents didn't take to it all very well. Um, uh, so I asked if it was hard to find work, and he said very, um, because of the language and everything like that. Um, I asked if it was hard to provide for the family, and he said from what he remembers, it was very hard. He remembers his parents both being upset, crying, not being able to provide. They would often go days without eating because they didn't have enough money. It was keep a roof over your head, um, or eat. And sometimes, they just didn't eat. Um, I asked a couple questions about language, and he the obvious answer was it was a struggle because they had to learn a whole new language. Um, I actually asked if we left any family over in Germany in Hamburg, and he said that he did. There was an uncle and an aunt and his cousins that they left over, and he believes now that that family has grown. They're still over there. They're alive to his knowledge, but we don't speak to them. We just lost contact. Um, I asked him if his parents ever regretted leaving their native country, and he had mixed feelings about that question. He said at first, yes, he thinks so. By seeing his parents, upset because they couldn't provide, they could provide in Germany. But he says if he could see him now and at what everyone has become because of them moving to America, they would they wouldn't think twice because he's successful. He's raised a great family of his own, and he said that he has great grandchildren, and he wouldn't change it for the world, and he doesn't believe his parents would either. Um, then asked him what it took to get approved to come to America, and he said that they had to get what was known as a green card. Um, and that green card just stated that they were lawfully in America, and um, basically that they once you applied for it and you got it after checks, background checks, things like that, you were approved and you got in. Um, I asked him how people generally treated them in America, and he said at a young age for him it wasn't anything different. Kids, they don't know any better. As he got older, things got a little different, but not much. He had a little bit of an accent because speaking with his parents in German. So we got teased a little bit with that. But for his parents, um, they were treated poorly. They were immigrants. They were second-class citizens to the average American at that time. So they weren't treated very well. Um, I asked them when, um, like, how did they get to America? And they said that they came over on a ship. That uh, his parents, the seas were rough. They were not sure if they would make it. They were hopeful, but they had no idea, and they would pray that they made it through it, and they did. Um, I asked them if they'd ever consider back moving to Germany, and my grandfather's response was no. Um, all the accomplishments and the struggles that we've had and faced, we got through, and this is our home now, and we have all kinds of family here. So to go back, it would undo everything, is how he put it. Um, I asked if the laws were different, and what types of laws were different, things like that. And he said, he had different freedoms over there. His parents would tell him, because he he didn't know firsthand. He visited once, but he didn't. He doesn't really know firsthand. He wasn't there that long that he could get accustomed to their laws. He said we have different freedoms over there, over here. Excuse me. But other than that, there's not much that's different. There are some things, but he wasn't exactly 100% sure on all of that. Um, I said, what, if any, has been easier since moving to America? And he said, honestly, nothing was very easy. He had to work. His family had to work for everything that they owned. Just every part, every day was a struggle, and they had to work. Um, but it was well worth it. Um, I then asked what did he hope to accomplish by moving to America, and he said he thinks that his parents had hopes for him to become a great, just be accomplished and have better opportunities for himself and for him to raise a better family than what they could provide for him. And I think he's done that, in my opinion. Um, I asked him the last question that I asked him before we stopped the interview was what things had been most difficult since moving to America. This was an emotional question for him. He went into detail about how he would stay up, could hear his, father crying because he could not provide for his family in the early years that when they moved to New York. Um, it, it, it was just a huge struggle for them, and he said that was the most difficult thing about moving, in his opinion, because he couldn't stand to see his parents upset and just sad. Um, and that was pretty much my interview with my grandfather. I think that it was very insightful, and I learned a lot from him during the course of my interviews with him, my other grandparents. But I feel like he shared the most, and um, I just learned a lot about my family, and I really couldn't have hoped or asked for more.